and we can see it's way different. We have this whole chunk. This node has the BP spawn actor object reference, but if you're loading it for the first time, there might be some delay. So let's talk about soft and hard object references. So hard object references are basically references of the assets that directly loaded into memory. Basically, it doesn't mean that you have kind of location of where the asset is, which is very cheap. That would be a soft object reference, but more of you will load the asset into memory and have it directly available. That would be a hard object reference. If you're gonna see how we can basically use and deal with that to kind of optimize our blueprints, because there is a lot of ways that Unreal will load object into memory and you will kind of not even know about it. So let's kind of test this out by just spawning an actor. So let's type spawn actor from class. And before we select any asset here, let's just look at our character. So if you right click on any blueprint, you can click size map and see basically what this blueprint references. So from this we can see that it references skeletal mesh for queen. I think there is probably materials and some few things to the side, so animation blueprint, and I'm not sure what this is, but there is few things. At the top you can see the total memory, so 200 megabytes for this character, nothing crazy. And now let's try to spawn an actor. So we want to spawn this actor. Now this actor is just an empty actor with a static mesh component, so it doesn't kind of reference anything, and we can call it in here, and we're also gonna need a location. So what I'm gonna do is just spawn this actor in front of our character or wherever our camera is looking. So let me take this, connect it here. So when you compile and save, we can then look at the size map again, and it should be pretty similar. There might be like some small thing here for the memory footprint of this object, but it's almost nothing because the object is really small. So it's basically 27 kilobytes. So that is fine. Now let's say we want to change the static mesh. So let's get static mesh function in here. So basically I'm just gonna set that static mesh to something. So when we left click in our game, we're gonna spawn an object in front of us. So I'm gonna select this wooden beehive, nothing too crazy. And now let's click play and left click, and we can see we're spawning beehives. Now this is all fine, but let's now look at our memory. So if I right click on size map, and we can see it's way different. We have this whole chunk which is S wooden beehives, S meaning static mesh. So this is our static mesh that takes up 770 megabytes. That's like a 4x than what we had before, and now it's taking up almost a gigabyte. So, and this is just one object, because keep in mind every static mesh, now this is very high quality static mesh, so smaller objects like maybe items or something like that are going to take way less memory. But you can imagine that if you hard load bunch of small objects, it's gonna add up and your character is gonna get bloated. And this is what happens all the time, where you have a character that when you spawn it, it basically takes up like 5, 6, 7 gigabytes, just that one character. If you're not sure why, that's because there is some references to some references to some references of bunch of static meshes, objects, textures, and it can happen very subtly where you don't even know why you have things loaded. So let's say right now we have this game mode, and if we see the size map, size of this game mode, it's basically 979 megabytes. And this is because we have this reference to the third person character. So even if you don't have this character loaded into the game, just by referencing this character, and we have it referenced in here, third person character, if you open up your game mode, we can see here, we have the character loaded. Just by having character referenced, not even spawned, we right away get a bunch of memory leaks. So if you have like bunch of character hard reference in different places, even by playing your game on an empty map, you can have like 5 gigabytes or something of memory just taken over. So you really have to be careful that by just having a hard reference anywhere of an object, it's gonna automatically load it as soon as that object is loaded. So as soon as game mode is loaded, it loads the character in the background, and you can choose or not choose to spawn that character or do whatever with him. So that's where you have to be very careful. Another interesting thing where you can kind of get weird stuff happening is let's say that we don't want to beehive in here. Let's say we just want to spawn this spawn actor, but let's say that we have on this spawn actor our static mesh. So let's compile, save. Now since we are referencing in here, so just because we have this BP spawn actor in here, this is a hard reference. So just because we have it in there, if I click on the size map, you see it's still loaded. But an interesting thing is, let's say we remove this. Let's do this. Okay, it's dropping us some errors, but that's not important. So you can see we still have it. So why do we still have it? Well, if you look at this node, even if it's disconnected, not doing anything, this node has the BP spawn actor object reference. So let's try to delete it and see if that helps. And it's still loaded somewhere. So let's try to find it. I think it's loaded just because it's in here. So let's try to delete this. And now it's loaded. So since we already set the spawn actor class to be the class that we wanted, but then we kind of changed it, it still had a reference, and also this guy also had a reference. So there is like a bunch of little things that you have to pay attention to see where your actual reference is. So now that we know that, let's try to be more careful and see how we can load stuff. Right now we're not doing anything, but let's say we want to load the beehive. When we click left click, we want to load it. So we have this, so soft object references. So I created a class, and this is just an actor class, soft object reference or class object reference class. So if I type actor, scroll here and hover, we can see 4 types. These 2 are hard object references, and then we have soft. So if you select this, you're gonna get a actor soft class reference, and here you can select basically any actor from your game. So what I'm doing, I'm using this async load class asset to load our class, but since this is an object class, we cannot directly connect it here. So we have to cast to the actor class. Now, why am I casting to the actor, not to the BP spawn actor? The reason is because if we cast to BP spawn actor, we're gonna get the reference to it, which will destroy the whole point of this. If you do it like this, we don't know which specific actor class this is, so hopefully you understand the child parent inheritance and stuff like that. We don't care about which specific actor class, we just need actor class here, and then we loaded that actor and from this path. So keep in mind, soft class or object reference is just like a path where this object is. So we can actually maybe visualize this. Let's do this, get a path. So I'm just gonna get the path of this and try to print, and you can see we are getting the game third person blueprints BP spawn actor. So that's basically where our location is. And then we use this async load class access to load it into memory. After we do this, it does become loaded into the memory, so you keep in mind that this is loading it into memory. But since we are doing it like this, our actor wouldn't have it loaded in here by default. So when this character is loaded in the game, it won't have the actor loaded, but after we load it from here, it will have it loaded into memory. So keep that in mind, that after you load the soft object, you will get it into memory. So let's do this, let's compile, save, and let's play. Now when I click left click, I am basically loading this object every time I click. And keep in mind that it's not like this object is loaded or unloaded every time. So when this node tries to load this object, if it's already in the memory, it's just gonna skip and go to completed. But if you're loading it for the first time, there might be some delay depending on how fast the SSD is, stuff like that. So there might be a little bit of a delay. That's one thing to keep in mind. So sometimes maybe you don't want to show it right away, you don't want to do anything in here, you want to wait for it completed, but then keep in mind that it might be a little bit delay for the player. So if something needs to be happening instantly, you might even want to load it before. So maybe you only want to load like few spells that your character has, maybe you load it on begin play, but then you don't have to have like 30 spells on your character, you can only have 3 that you load, and then you can instantly call them. So you don't even have to do this like when you want to do something with that object, you can do it even before. So that's one way, so you can basically load a class. But let's say that our class does not have any object in here, and we just want to spawn. Let's copy paste this. So we want to spawn this spawn actor, and we want to manually at runtime set the static mesh that we want to have. So let's say we do this. Now keep in mind, since I removed the reference in here, we should have it at 208, and this should be like 30-40 kilobytes. So that is all fine. So let's go back. So the other thing that we can do is have the soft object reference. So object refers to a specific asset, not to their class. And basically what we are doing is loading it similarly like the class, and then we just need to cast to the specific static mesh that we want, or not to specific static mesh, but to static mesh object that we want, and set it as the new mesh. So we can delete this. So let's connect this here. So this is the static mesh component from the spawn actor, and I just want mesh soft reference connected in here. And you can see, even though we have it referenced in here, we don't have the reference of the object, we have the reference to the location. So keep that in mind. That is the big difference. So now let's compile, save, let's check our size map. 208, we are good. Let's click play. And we have the same effect as when we loaded the class, only now we are loading whatever mesh we want. So we could do something like this. Let's do random bool, branch, maybe connect it like this. Let's duplicate, and let's say we have something else here. I'm just gonna do this quickly and dirty. Let's disconnect here. So this is not gonna look the nicest, but I just want to quickly demonstrate where you can kind of choose which object you want. So right now we are just choosing at random. So let's load it like this. I'm just gonna duplicate all of this, connect it to false, compile, save, and let's click play. And now we should be getting it at random, but it looks like the box a little bit preferred. And if we look back to our character, it's still 208.8, and there is no references to the box or to the beehive. So hopefully this kind of clears up a little bit how soft object and soft class references work, and also to be very careful to check your size maps, check what's taking up a lot of space, especially with a character. If you put a bunch of stuff onto your character directly, it can get bloated, so maybe use components, put stuff in there, load some assets that you need in different ways, not directly referencing them, and just be careful, especially if you have your character referenced in the game mode. Even if maybe you don't use him right away, you can get screwed where you have a bunch of characters loaded already in the beginning and you only see one character or something like that.